never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it's...
We're gonna overwhelm Matt's poor Polish ancestry with a bunch of gabagools and
that's my other side.
Our
Hey,
hands,
I got you, Matt.
Everyone's gonna make fun of me for eating one tomato-based dish last night and then having heartburn for 24 hours because I can't take it.
Matt, no.
People too far
weak
north
Eastern
of
European
the Alps.
stomach just cannot.
Go eat your
Cannot handle
potato
the acid.
pierogi and your sour cream.
I will. I'm gonna smother it with dill, and I'm gonna like
It's
it.
gonna be great.
Hey, Rob, is journalism dead? Is journalism's dead? No, wait. Whose music is that? Is it Rascal News' music? Today on the podcast, we are joined by two very special guests, Rowan, Zeoli, and Lynn Codega of Rascal News, who Phoenix-like are rescuing tabletop games journalism from the dead. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. As some of our listeners will undoubtedly know, you very recently, like a week ago today, less than
Week ago tomorrow.
Okay,
as
so
of this recording.
It was Tuesday. A week ago, you launched a brand new site, rascal.news. It is the two of you and
Chase Carter,
all seasoned, experienced journalists, tabletop, covering tabletop issues and others. And you, can I call you rascals? Do you like to be called
you should.
rascals?
We are rascals. A little bit of a rascal.
You rascals have decided to kind of do your own thing. And this is, boy, there's a lot to talk about here, but this is interesting to me because tabletop news was already pretty, I want to say, nascent, non-existent. Like when every media organization decided to cut 50 to 90% of their journalists. So before it had a chance to get strangled in its crib, you all have launched this thing. Tell us about it. How's it going? What gave you this idea? I mean, I have guesses, but like what got you started?
I was laid off. So
that'll do it.
You and me both. Solidarity. To the
cheers.
Thanks to the unemployment minds.
Yeah. So I was laid off in, I think, early November of last year, and the dominoes were already starting to fall with layoffs and with the industry kind of collapsing in on itself in a really tangible way, where I was looking at it and I was like, there's just no way I'm going to get another reporting gig. It's just no way. And freelancing, God, it's so horrible. Freelancing is the worst.
It's the worst. It's so awful.
Actually, my part in this is that I have been a freelancer for Kotaku off and on for years. And last year, my editor and her editor both got fired as I was in the process of trying to finalize an article, which did eventually get published and I did eventually get paid, but it was like a 6 months process. So
right.
To sort of support your assertion that freelancing is terrible, it's awful.
It's very bad.
Yeah.
So I sort of looked at that and I was like, I can't. Like, my mental faculties are not so strong that I can handle freelancing. It's not in me. So I just started thinking about what we could do to make a sustainable journal, like a new sustainable outlet. And tabletop role playing has been kind of my beat on and off for about 5 years. So I was like, you know what? Let's see if it's something we can do. And we did. I quickly pulled in Rowan and then Chase. So we really all worked on it together for about 2 or 3 months. And yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, you're right that that tabletop news is pretty nascent and a lot of it relies on blogs and citizen journalism on YouTube. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also like that's not a way to build a sustainable critical ecosystem, you know? And there's places like Dicebreaker and there's places like Polygon, but they don't commission a lot of work, right? And they have like a very specific kind of voice that they have. And we were just like, well, we can do it differently. And we're not trying to assert that like we're the first to ever do it or like we can do it better. We're just like, we can do it differently. We can do it our way. We can cover things differently. We can provide a different kind of platform. We can go after stories no one else is telling. And we can do it with kind of a journalist eye and a blogger's mindset.
And people seem to like it.
I like it. This is jumping ahead, but you did for another independently owned site, Aftermath. Lynn, you were on. I have not actually finished listening or reading because it came out this afternoon. But you mentioned, other things have existed. There's Bell of Lost Souls, EN World, Geek World. There's blogs, and this is going to sound disparaging, and it's not meant that way. But like these are often blogs that do journalism like as a bonus or on the side, right? Like they are often industry focused or product focused, and there's still a place for that, and that's still, those are still valuable sites that I read pretty frequently. But there's not there isn't a specific journalist or journalism outlet that focuses on tabletop, and that is the niche that you are attempting to fill, if I understand correctly.
Totally. And there is, Dicebreaker does like cover tabletop in addition to board games and card games, but so we're like kind of drilling down even more specific than what Dicebreaker does. I think that that's exactly the niche we're trying to fill, and we're trying to remain very focused. Like a lot of those places have, like EN World has EN Publishing attached, and it also has a forum attached. And it's much more about that kind of production and that kind of community. And that's not to say EN World doesn't do good journalism. They did a really wonderful rundown of how Evil Hat kind of, or not Evil Hat, I'm so sorry, Evil Genius Games.
Evil Genius.
Kind of.
Oh, boy.
Careful.
We're so sorry, Evil Hat. Please.
We love you, Evil Hat. Don't get mad.
Fred Hicks, thank you so much. So, yes. So Evil Genius Games and how there were problems there and how that kind of imploded. And that was like a really wonderful piece that showed, Morris's like commitment to the community and how connected he is. But stuff like that doesn't happen very often. Pieces like that don't pop up a lot across like all of these sites. And a lot of them are, service journalism focused, which is, here's a product, buy it, which we also like deeply respect, which is why we have like an announcement section of our site that is just here's a product, buy it. That we have been very, very careful about and very considerate about like how we present it, how it's put on the site, and how it's labeled and tagged and everything like that. So yeah, we are trying to fill this like really specific niche, and hopefully we will do a good job.
Yeah, we're trying to cover as much as we can, from like deep investigation to like real criticism of this, like you said, nascent medium across TTRPGs and actual plays, and like bringing the development side over a bit. So yeah, kind of expanding in this way is where we think that there are these various holes of investigative journalism and like real serious criticism that engages with them as works of art rather than products to be sold.
Yeah, I think Rowan can talk a little bit more about this, but I think one of the portions of our site that we're really, banking on. Sorry, Rowan, pressure's on. One of the portions of our site that we're really banking on is the fact that APs don't receive a lot of critical coverage. And Rowan, thank God we have this Gen Z e-girl here who's ready and willing to take on AP coverage. So that's another part of our site where we're just like, well, this is like tabletop and we have to cover it. Like we have to. We owe it to the people who are performing. We owe it to the people in the hobby. Like it needs to be talked about.
I think this is so interesting, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. Some some people, not me, but some people might say, well, actual plays, like, well, that's not worthy of journalistic coverage. But it reminds me that like the New York Times still has a ballet critic, I think, and like like opera and dance. And this is not me saying that those things don't deserve to exist. Like I'm just saying that those have fewer attendees and patrons than your average Critical Role episode. So clearly this is something that deserves a journalistic and critical eye. I think that very much justifies it. And there's a lot going. I don't know. Me personally, I have ADHD, and it's very hard for me to watch an actual play. I like that they exist. I think they're neat. I can't keep up. So I would love if there were more written pieces about what's happening in the world of actual plays, and there is not a whole lot. So this is one aspect of your site that I am particularly, me personally, looking forward to.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited for it as well. I think something that's really interesting about all of the critics that you named for ballet, for more traditional mediums of art, is that these are all like really significant class signifiers. Like if you are into ballet, if you are into opera, if you are into theater, you are a cultured member of the upper class. Whereas tabletop actual plays don't have that same moniker. They are really being driven forward in a lot of different ways. They were at one point a very specific demographic, and now they have expanded to include so many types of peoples, like people of color, disabled people, trans people, queer people, just so like so many different groups are represented within actual play, that I think that's part of the reason why it's not taken as seriously these more established mediums. And having these places of access for people of different abilities. Like I also have ADHD personally, not a huge streaming fan, but I still think it's a really valuable piece of the medium. But my job as a critic, what I want to be doing is to represent people who don't have 4 hours every week to watch a stream, but want like a half hour to 2 hour episode of a really tightly edited, perfectly produced actual play, and then building on that tradition to make a more developed medium so other people can meet these standards that are being artistically pushed in all these different areas.
Actually, this is a great opportunity for me to give an example to our listeners of what sorts of writing you can find on rascal.news, because I read a great article today by Chase about ADHD games. Actually, it made me incredibly stressed out to read it, because these are games that are designed and written by people with ADHD to try to sort of like model the experience. One is called My Brain is a Stick of Butter. And the other one is Soft Focuses. And Chase is writing about sort of his experience trying to play and write about these games. I found it very, very interesting and very relatable. But this was, again, as a writer and horrible nerd, like this is the perfect way to tell me about a thing and also like make me interested in the hearing about it. It's, Chase did a really good job of describing his experience and also describing the thing in question, which is these two games about the ADHD experience. And that's this is what I love about sites like one of the sites that you're modeled after, Defector, is that they can do sort of just like Defector has a bunch of great articles about very specific sports things. It's a bunch of ex-Deadspin writers, but also they have the leeway to sort of just like write whatever they want. And sometimes there's some really like just great pieces that are, tangentially sports related or not sports related at all, that are, would not happen if you were under the gun of a, Geo Media type place. And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite Defector articles is a hot pink bitch named Breakfast. And I've sort of...
I know that one. That's
it's
great.
A good one.
It's yeah.
For those of you who don't understand who a hot pink bitch named Breakfast is, it's this investigation into like this hot pink Pomeranian that was like posted on a dog lover's site that only had the title, this hot pink bitch is named Breakfast. So someone was like, I want to find Breakfast. So they did, and they wrote about it for Defector. It's really like just such a funny little blog, but also very, very cool. And that was one of those articles that I put into our like planning and our Slack, and I was like, I want to leave room for a hot pink bitch named Breakfast to come into our lives. But yeah, I think that Rowan can definitely talk about this because she's encountered like a couple articles where I was like, we can't publish this, right? Because we are, still trying to attract people who want to read what we write, but we are very much allowing ourselves to publish work that would be otherwise unpublishable elsewhere. Rowan, do you want to talk about those articles?
You mean the ones that I just published? The ones that came out this week?
I think that the ones that you had to split in two.
Yeah. So currently, I have a piece that just came out last week that I had to split in two because I am a very long-winded talker, as we have learned just based on my one monologue in this podcast alone. But I really love to like learn and talk to smart people, talk about smart things. And we cover such a gamut of experience. I got to speak with Montana State Representative Zoe Zephyr and like independent journalist Aaron Reed. So I got to talk to a politician and one of the foremost journalists in the anti-trans like coverage space.
Who's also an independent journalist.
Yes. A very important aspect, who is also reader funded, so that is how she gets to do her work. And I got to talk to them about Dungeons and Dragons and how TTRPGs intersect with their lives because they just so happen to love them. And like that is not a thing that I could get really anywhere else. And getting to dive in deep with actual play creators about their process and talk about things that probably wouldn't get space on other publications.
So this is where I have to let me try to be a good interviewer and challenge you a little bit about your model, right? So
Yes.
like Defector, like Aftermath, like a few other sites that have popped up in the ruins of various larger sites, you're reader funded, and Defector has been positive. They published their financials, or they publish them pretty frequently, and they're doing just fine. That's a big site with some big names attached to it.
Mm.
Are you concerned about your ability to maintain this, to be profitable, to continue to do the work that you do?
Every fucking day. Every goddamn day, Rob.
Way to go, Rob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Obviously that's like a huge concern, and we are.
I know it's just like 1 week, so it's not very nice to ask you about that. But like I do sort of, I want to ask you the big business question, like the big, outstanding thing. I will continue to throw money at you, and hopefully a lot of our listeners will as well. But I'm just wondering how how you're approaching this question.
So we're approaching it in a couple different ways. The first is that we are really viewing our subscription model as kind of a crowdfunding model. And we know that like a lot of people have subscription fatigue, but we also know that there is money in the tabletop role-playing game space, in the hobby. And we believe that if we put out a good product, and if we do good journalism, and if we continue to write good blogs, people will find us. And we just, are firmly hanging on to that like a little cat in the poster that just says, "Hang in there."
Hang in there.
Yeah. I personally think that, yes, I'm very nervous about it. I would love for me to be correct about this, but I do think so. The amount of people in the actual play space alone, the people who watch Critical Role and Dimension 20, that fan base alone is rabid and engaged and hungry for content and things to read and analyze and think about the media they're consuming. And that's just one segment of the larger industry. I wrote a piece for a different publication that I was writing for. That was one of the publication's largest pieces ever. That was just like an offhanded interview with someone from Dimension 20. And so like the understanding that this audience is there, they just need to trust us, because that's the thing. Like that's why Dimension 20 is as successful as it is. It's because people trust the people making it. And that's a similar kind of idea.
Yeah, I'll also say that we've had like a really incredible reception, and we got a pretty good chunk of subscribers, both memberships who are non-paying and subscribing paid memberships, which are obviously paying. And we are about a third of the way to sustainability at this point. So
I mean, that's great.
it's great news. Like it's going,
absolutely.
like it's going.
That's Rascal news.
It's going so well. It's certainly not. We're certainly not at the place where we can say like, yeah, we'll be around for like 2 or 3 years. But I think that at this point, I'm pretty confident that I could do this for a whole year, because I have like another source of income coming in, and we are going to be like really, really equitable and really careful about like where our money goes, how much we give to ourselves, and we are going to be like pursuing other avenues of revenue. Not a whole lot, but like every now and then we're like, okay, we'll try it. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're worried about. And our goal is always sustainability and not number go big up.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, like looking at the site and what y'all have already put out, it's like I imagine the ideal reader of the site is someone who, let's say, cares about what's happening in the industry, but also like cares about thinking critically about the games they play. And I am hopeful and positive that that is most people who play tabletop role-playing games. Maybe it's not. I think it is. And maybe you could add in like a little footnote is like actually willing to support the people whose work they read so that they can have a decent life, right? And not just expect that every good piece of criticism and investigation just comes for free and just have to watch 20 ads.
Yeah, we really want to make sure we stay ad free. We want to stay really focused on our readers. We are planning on having like a live Q&A in a couple weeks, like in mid-March. We are planning on asking our readers what they like, what they don't like. We're really trying to be we're trying to like be writer led, but we're trying to be like reader focused. You know, we really want to make sure that we are delivering the kind of work that people are interested in reading, even if like, you know, hard hitting investigations are great. They don't happen every month. They rarely happen more than like 2 or 3 times a year. I firmly believe last year was like some weird fluke where we had like OGL. A lot of things
happened last year.
The Gen Con theft.
Unusually large amount of things happened in the tabletop space last year. It was
the strikes. Like it was just nonstop.
Yeah.
Well, it's also what happens as an industry grows. You get more attention on it, and people who started doing stuff under the table without attention now are in positions of power and need to be held accountable.
That's absolutely true. That's a great point. And this is, I think, I mean, this is why I'm optimistic for Rascal, but like why I think it's necessary is that tabletop, well, yeah, it's been growing for a long time, but it is not slowing down, right? And it's gaining more participants and more more influence, and obviously it's a lot more money, and it's important that there are critics, journalists, people to pay attention and to hold various persons accountable as it goes through that change, and the industry is not going to do it itself. It is not going to police itself or hold anyone to account, and
and we are like not the only outlet doing that kind of reporting, but we are happy to be in the mix. We're just so excited to be here. We're so ready.
We're so happy to be here. We're
excited to be here.
So like again, we are not under the impression that other people aren't also going to be working these stories and these angles, but we are really excited to also, add our own investigative eye and like maybe talk, like get stories that other people don't. So we'll see what happens. We're working hard, if that helps.
I mean, y'all say you're just happy to be here, but with the two of you plus Chase, I feel like that's a significant percentage of the people who are qualified and interested in writing as journalists about TTRPGs. I'm not going to say what that percentage is.
I mean, we're not trying to denigrate.
It seems like a large percentage.
Any of the other people who are working on this, but they're just, they're not that many people, right? And the fact that there are 3 of you is a large percentage. Yeah, not how big is another question, but that's a a significant chunk of the people who do and are qualified to write about this subject matter.
Right.
That's part of what we're really also like trying to do long term with Rascal, if we do get to stay here, is make Rascal an incubator for people who want to be journalists in the space. So making contributorships, making fellowships, growing our staff when it's possible to make it so that way we can have more diverse voices, but also like you have to come from a certain level of privilege to be able to do journalism, especially niche journalism. And so making that pathway and that access point easier for people and more sustainable long term is really part of what we're trying to do as well. That's the foundation we're trying to lay on top of or underneath the great journalism we are really striving to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot of people reporting on tabletop role-playing games is just like the fact. Like, it's just a fact. There's just not a lot of people doing it in English. There's not a lot of people doing it in Spanish. There's not a lot of people doing it in any language anywhere. It's just like not getting attention. It's not getting outlets are just simply not built for tabletop journalism. Even Polygon, which again, we love Polygon. Charlie Hall's like a really wonderful colleague in the space. It's just him. It's just him on that on that beat, and he hires a ton of freelancers, and that's never ceases to amaze me that it's like just Charlie putting out like all of these articles and occasionally a freelancer, and like his budget's been slashed, and everyone's budget has been slashed. And if it hasn't been slashed, people have been laid off. Like, it's just, there's no room for tabletop news in traditional outlets and legacy media, which is, again, one of the reasons why we sort of all looked around and we're like, we gotta do this now. Like, there's no other option.
Yeah, it's a grim time for journalism.
Yeah, it's a little bleak.
In general. I like. I'm trying to think of like a positive thing.
Well, this is what gives me hope about this.
But yeah.
Yeah, this is what gives me hope, is like the fact that we are doing this and the fact that we were so warmly recepted immediately. Like, that is a testament to what people want. I feel like a lot of the times we live in a world that is very hopeless, that is like designed to be like, hey, you can't have hope, nothing can ever change, so just like lay down and deal with it, like suffer, and that's all you can do. But what we're trying to do with Rascal, and I think what a lot of people are trying to do with tabletop games in general, is imagine new possibilities for what could be, and imagine ways that we can change the way things have been. So like that's why we're doing this equitable model of like distribution, and why we are so focused on making sure that we are serving the community rather than just like saying what we want to say or chasing SEO or like doing click through, whatever we can do in that way. Like, we are focused on making this as a service so that way we can provide a better option for, maybe not better, but I think a better option for the future, what we can all strive to do.
A better industry option for sure. And like you mentioned, Defector is doing really well. They bring in about $4.5 million a year. 404 Media, which is an incredible company. They do tech journalism. It's a lot of like former Motherboard reporters. They've only been around for 6 months and they're sustainable.
404 has broken I'm such a journalism nerd. They've broken a bunch of like really good stories about algorithms and SEO, stuff that was relevant to the work that I used to do. Really
incredible.
Good, important journalism. So it clearly can work. We mentioned Aftermath is also new, and they're a month old or a couple months old, and they seem to be doing great. I have high hopes for them. 3 months, thank you, Lynn. And we're hoping that all these things are sustainable. It's like we have mentioned, all of the traditional models, or I suppose not traditional, the what sprung up in the last 10, 15 years, mostly ad funded journalistic sites have just they're all either they have collapsed or they are collapsing, and there's a big gaping hole where a bunch of them used to be. But there is, I think, people do want to read this, and they do they are interested in good journalism. So let me ask you, let's pivot to the positive. What are you excited? You've already told us a little bit about this, but like, what are you excited to cover and write about as Rascal moves forward? Like, what are you interested in as individuals and as a site?
Well, something I'm really excited about is making these kind of global connections between communities. I have a piece coming up where I am talking to Federico, an Argentinian journalist. He is, again, a journalist as kind of a side job, but he did some really incredible reporting last year on Wizards of the Coast pulling out of South America. And we kind of talked through that and his census that he did of Argentina, of Argentinian role players. And so just through that one conversation alone, I've already seen the bridge being built between the English-speaking community of TTRPG and actual play and the Spanish-speaking community. That bridge was built really quickly and is already starting to move. And so we can do that with other communities across the world as well and really interconnect all of these disparate, isolated groups of people who are playing TTRPGs but are just blocked by the structures that are already there.
I think this is very much needed and very interesting. And some of our listeners may know that Wizards just announced that they won't be publishing in Portuguese anymore, which is, to me, shocking because Brazil is an enormous like TTRPG market, especially or including and especially for D&D. And so I'm puzzled. I'm boggled. Lynn is acting like they know something about this, and so I'm hoping to hear a little bit more. But this is a great example of like that international connection, right? Like how it is helpful to know and be in contact with professionals and journalists in other countries because we are living in a global world and it matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I also want to reiterate what Rowan mentioned, what you just mentioned, that I'm interested in international games. I'm interested in games from Brazil, games from Japan, games from the global south in general, games from Italy also. Like, there's a really incredible game scene in Italy. Like, Fabula Ultima was an Italian game that was translated, and that swept the Yennies last year. Free League Swedish, but also not an American game company, and like has a very different ethos in a lot of ways. So definitely interested in international games. I'm definitely interested in doing reviews of indie games and doing like some short, concise reviews that like really dig into like what is this indie game saying and like that kind of critique. I'm interested in doing investigations and like doing that kind of like really intense reporting work. It's very fun for me, and it just like there's something in my brain that just like likes it a lot. It can be a problem, but I enjoy it a lot. When I say it can be a problem, I mean it can be a problem for Rowan and Chase when I just cannot stop talking.
We have to be like, hey, Lynn, come back. Why does this matter? What?
It's so funny. And then I was like working on this one thing, and Chase was like, why don't you work on something that requires like less formatting? And I'm just like looking at my Notion, which has like tables, a database, like toggles, and Chase is like, you need to chill the fuck out. And I'm like,
deep breaths.
So I can like go into that rabbit hole very, very quickly. But another thing that I'm really, really, really excited about is to just have a place where we can offer cultural criticism, where we can look at games and we can tie it to culture, where we can look at actual plays, tie it to culture, where we can look at like LARPs, tie it to culture, where we can sort of say like, the reason that games in the 90s dealt with like alternate, like a hidden world, right? So many games in the 90s had like, there's this hidden magical world, or like there's this hidden world of vampires, or like there's cults all around and they know the truth. So many games in the 90s like dealt with that because of like the culture of the 90s, where people were really struggling to like find identity, because people were really struggling to understand the technological movement that was happening like super, super fast. So I'm really interested in having a space, like a non-academic space, where you can actually like dive into these critiques of games and game design and tying it back to like why it matters right now and why it's a reflection of the culture we are currently living in.
Games are, they rate, tabletop ranges an awful large swath of the population, and obviously is varied in a lot of different ways. But there are some shockingly smart people who are writing games
Mhm.
and doing
Mhm.
some really like interesting and avant-garde stuff with them. And I think that, that deserves thought and critical review. And it's honestly, it's hard to do. I read, I will read or play games that just, sort of like, scramble my brains, and I'm like, what, it's hard to, it's both like rewarding, but like also difficult to engage with, right? Because you're sort of operating in this, like we mentioned, like nascent space where a lot of this stuff is very new and very experimental and very, it can be isolating. It can be very, very niche. I don't know. This is I don't know, kind of like the thesis of this stupid podcast that Matt and I do is, there's people are, there's more popular than ever, and people are coming to the hobby in, more and more every year. I think there's a lot to recommend it. I think that it's a good, like Rowan was saying at the beginning, there's a lot about playing tabletop at this moment in time that is very, very interesting and rewarding and different. But unlike ballet or opera or dance or theater, there's just like not a structure around, understanding it, right, and talking about it and dissecting it. So sorry, I got all, wandered off into a tangent, but like, yeah, I think I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And of course, like a lot of that work was done on blogs, on like a lot of individuals sort of like posting on blogs. Like the bloggies last year like had a really great reception, had like a really great showcase of like people thinking critically about games. And I'm just like, I want to do that. I want to do that too. So yeah, like I said earlier, Rascal's definitely a mix in between like legacy media and like the kind of uninhibited like DIY punk vibe of like it's a blog and you can blog whatever the blogging what to blog.
The only inhibitions we have are journalistic ethics.
Oh yeah, we do. That's true. We have those.
Great tagline.
Yeah, I mean,
The
yeah.
only inhibitions we have are our ethics. Yeah, I wrote something the other week, and Rowan was like, "Linda, you can't post this," and I'm just like, "All right." She was right. She was very right to tell me like, Linda, you can't do this. I'm like, okay.
I was like, hey, I love the energy. Not right
like,
now.
This is not a blog to post ethically, and I'm like, well, they're only ethics when you actually have to like
sacrifice things
what
for
you
them.
want to do for it. So otherwise they're just like baby rules.
Mm-hmm. And we have some thorough ethics.
We do. They're fun. But yeah, so definitely we're really excited to dig into a lot of the ways in which games intersect with culture.
Well, you mentioned in your, I guess, your launch article about new tabletop games journalism, a bunch of those blogs and a bunch of those, I don't know, I think there's even some like forum posts in here, because you're right that like a lot of that conversation does and did take place in blogs, on the Forge, on EN World, which is cool, and it's like what I like about the internet. But like there is also a need for that to be formalized and given a home. I had a question and I lost it. It was about.
Is it what else are you excited to get into and investigate and publish?
Yes.
We only got one thing so far.
That's right.
We could easily have 2 or 3 things.
Well, yeah. So tomorrow I wrote a review of Forgery by Banana Chan that I'm really excited to publish. Really excited about that one. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, Rowan has another 2-part interview because she cannot stop talking to cool people. It's ridiculous.
I can't. Yeah, I'm very excited. That's a piece where I speak to the producers of Harlem Hellfighters Never Die by Queen's Court Games. They are... Yeah, it's a really fantastic all-black actual play set during the Harlem Renaissance. It's a Lovecraftian horror. It is a really, really interesting piece that it's like both just a very good actual play with very well done production, and I break that down a bit in the first article and talk about how the themes of journalism connect to what we're doing. And then in the second article, talk a bit and examine like the socio-cultural dynamics of the tabletop space and being Black within the tabletop space, and how that actual play piece fits within the larger tradition of Black horror, and how it is enabled to explore that through the medium. So getting to really dive into the deep nitty-gritty ways that all of these things intersect and overlap, like Lynn was just saying, about how it's all interconnected. We're talking about culture through talking about games.
Yeah. I'm also really excited. So one of our recurring columns is going to be called Lay It on the Table, because we couldn't find anything else that worked. So we're just like, this is kind of lame, but we're doing it. Because we have embraced cringe. Anyway,
we are cringe, but we are free.
So every Friday we're publishing a Lay It on the Table column, which is when one of the Rascals talks about a game that they have played. And not even over the past week, just like a game that they have played. And Chase's game, Chase's Lay It on the Table, is going to be our first one on Friday, and it's about Delta Green. And it's like, it goes into his characters, like what Delta Green means as a game, etc. And it is a toit 1,500 words. Beautiful. We love it. And then I wrote one about Orbital Blues that is like 3,200 words. So we'll see if it stays that long. But I got like really into it. I don't know what to tell you. I just got really emotional over my sad space cowboys. So we're really excited to see how that continues, and hopefully get pieces that are shorter than 3,000 words next time.
That's why you divide them into two parts.
What can I say?
That's why you do a two-parter. That's right.
It's an old journalism.
That's right.
Old journalism trick.
This one weird trick. Yeah. Editors don't want you to know.
Hate this weird trick. So yeah, I'm excited for that. One of the things I'm also excited about is when we sort of get more into the swing of things, we have sort of decided that like we are going to dedicate like a portion of our week to playing games with each other, because that's going to be our jobs. So yes. I'm really excited to run a Blaze in the Dark campaign.
Nice.
Like maybe it'll be like Thursdays from like 1 to 4. It's just like all the Rascals get together and like we play Blaze in the Dark for 3 hours during our workday. Who knows?
Which would be great. Be a dream.
I mean, this is I'm so glad to hear you say that, because this is a really challenging part of what we do as well. Like we talk, Matt and I talk about a lot of games that we have either played once or just read, because we do run games and play games. We only have so many hours in the day, and it's just like a challenge of this medium to like talk about games when you have to find at least 2 other people and several hours to properly review them. So yeah, I know that you all have limited time, but I think that's it shows that you are taking it seriously. I would love to hear about that Blades in the Dark game.
So actually, this actually leads me to like another article that I'm planning on writing, is that I firmly believe that you don't have to play a game in order to critique a game.
I agree.
I agree. I happen to think,
otherwise we wouldn't have a show anymore.
We still do it. I happen to believe that it is useful context, that it's valuable, to fully like give a nuanced review. I do not think it is necessary.
Totally.
But yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that I have like mixed feelings. I think that like there's nothing wrong with like playing a game and reviewing it, and I think that's a totally legit and fine way to play games. And I also think it's totally fine to like read a game and review it, and you have just as a valid and considerate review as someone who's like played it. And I think a large part of that is because like when you read the game, you have the unfiltered text from the author. And when you play a game, you bring in your own expectations, you bring in your players' expectations, and you sort of add all of these layers in between you and the original work. Like sometimes that helps, and then sometimes it actually gives you a distorted view of what the game, again, I'm using air quotes, I'm sorry, this is an audio medium, what the game, air quotes, is.
I always feel like my reviews of games I've actually run are like 1,000% more positive, because after the experience of playing, it's like,
Because
you
you're
know, not to be like
Yeah.
I'm so good, but like I've been around the block enough that I could maybe take any set of mechanics and kind of make them work and have a lot of
Also-
fun. Like I know I'm not gonna not
Yeah,
have
because you
fun,
were playing
know?
games with
it's
your
it's an
friends.
RPG. Yeah.
You're like hanging out with your friends and like talking about imagination. Like, of course you're gonna have a good time.
This is the magic of TTRPGs. I don't know I'm always going to have fun if I play Spirit Island or whatever new board game that somehow like makes me angry. But I know with an RPG,
Matt's very
I'll get to roleplay a
he's
character,
very curmudgeonly
and it'll be
about
fun.
new games.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean,
but not about.
But by
role-playing
the
games. Yeah,
same
that's the
token,
point,
like
right?
again, I'm in agreement. But like playing game in the other direction, like running and playing other games often recontextualizes what I have been playing. I'm not going to name any particular highly popular world dominating role play game, but like playing others has really like I would go back and change my initial review of certain games having that context. But you're right that like I do think that probably the most instructive review is one that is just what is in this, how what is in the book that I have been given. But I do think that there is also, I don't know, maybe a secondary or a supplementary review that's like, how does this play?
I mean,
Because there is
but
Matt's also right. You're with your friends, you're hanging out. You are an experienced GM. You know how to adapt. So like that's hardly it's different.
Yeah. And I don't think that there is anything at all wrong with playing a game and reviewing only after you've played the game and sort of getting that impression down first. I think that I don't think that there's any wrong way to review a game. It's sort of like what my big point here is. But I'm probably gonna write a blog about how like I don't need to play a game to review it. You're all just haters. Stay mad.
Don't need to play a game to watch an actual play.
That's also true. Well, like let me bug you all about this because I'm really, really interested in it. Lynn, you published this article about YouTube's D&D video. Sorry, not D&D. Sorry, I already made this mistake. It was a TTRPG video about actual plays, but the point that you make, which is correct, is that it's 99% Dungeons and Dragons. You very thoroughly went through it to find the 1.5
the one Chaosium reference.
What one video that is not D&D. I think that this is just classic YouTube, but it's also like it's very, very interesting to me. Like, what do you think? Let's pivot to sort of like actual plays. Like, what do you think is coming in that direction, right? Like, what do you see changing, and how do you expect that Rascal is going to be covering that going forward?
Rowan, how do you see actual
sorry,
play
this is really a question for Rowan. No, sorry. Yeah. There's Lynn's article that made me think about it, but it's really Rowan's.
It is Rowan's beat.
Well, let's put a fun little pin in that. In the first draft that Lynn did of that YouTube article, I had to go through and be like, hey, you hate this. That's so fair, and you're right. Why? Tell me why.
The recurring joke is that like we quote the Backstreet Boys a lot because we are just like, tell me why.
Tell me why.
Tell me why.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
So that's a big recurring joke. Anyway.
Tell me why.
But yeah, so that's basically what we've had to do for our edits back and forth to each other for our like criticisms of things that we maybe don't like. But my goal for actual play moving forward, the coverage that I do there is to uplift the work of smaller creators who are really pushing things in the medium, people who are not the big names, who don't have the budgets per se, who are like, oh, you're doing some medium defining work over here. Like you are doing interesting things if you're doing it remotely with editing and sound design and overlay, or if you're doing it in person in Studio One, how you are engaging with set dressing and costuming and lighting and the performance itself, and then like thematic analysis a bit. And then when it comes to larger actual plays that have corporate funding, that is becoming a bit more popular right now, holding those to a standard of, okay, well, you are making media for mass consumption. What is this that you are making? What is your intention behind it? Is your intention behind it to make a work of art? Is your intention behind it to be in community with the other people making actual play? Or are you making something just to sell a product? Are you making something that is just supposed to be like capital C content, as I say in one of the articles that I have on the site already? And really trying to go down like this, how in this nascent medium that is still developing, that we are watching come to maturation, how can we make sure that the heart of this like folk art, which is what essentially actual play is, just a bunch of people telling stories around a campfire, but there's no fire and instead there are dice. Like, how do we keep that at the heart of it without capitalism doing its thing and destroying the art that people are trying to make? How do we make sure that the people who are doing it, because it's beautiful and an incredibly human thing to do, get the money to be able to keep doing it?
This is really interesting, and I'm gonna. This isn't, now we're just talking about actual plays, but I just want to bug you about this. Like, do you see a significant difference? Like, do you think that there is a distinction or should be a distinction between a scripted or partially scripted like actual play and like a purely like this is our game improvisational table? Like, does there need to be like in the future like different categories of actual play to truly understand what's going on? Like I'm sort of ambivalent about this myself, but like some of them are clearly like produced. Either they are literally scripted or they are cut and edited in such a way to make them narratively coherent, and others are just like the raw audio or footage. And I see the enjoyment in both, but like I do see kind of like a divergence, and it's not just about production values. It's also about like the artistic intent behind the actual play. Anyway, sorry, I'm curious about your thoughts on this as somebody who knows a lot more.
Yeah. So this is actually a conversation I have a lot with a lot of various different people in the industry. One of them notably being Dr. Emily Friedman, who does a lot of really incredible work in the actual play space. We have a similar but slightly different opinion about this. I do think that actual play is like the core term that we should be using as we are defining a new medium, because people are like, oh, well, it's not actual play. Yeah, but like movies, if we're going to go back and do etymology, like if we're going to play this game, then we can talk about that about every single word that's ever existed. But if we're trying to just agree on a common ground, I think actual play as a core term is kind of what we should stick with, and then modulate from that, which is kind of where Dr. Friedman sits. I think that kind of going even further than that, we need to think of new terms, and we need to develop these new terms, which is actually a conversation I have quite frequently. Again, like there's a term that we're trying to figure out right now for what is an actual play that is made as a content branch of a pre-existing studio, like how Smosh did their Smosh D&D. Like, they're not trying to make an actual play as a piece of art. They're trying to do something different and just play D&D, but it's still an actual play. And that has a different role in the ecosystem of introducing people to people sitting around at a table playing a tabletop role-playing game than a Dimension 20, or like in art actual play like Goodia by Nameless Domain, which is a 2-hour-long Bluebeard's Bride actual play set with an all Desi, or a mostly Desi cast, exploring South Asian interpretations of Bluebeard's Bride. That's art, 100%. Very different thing. And so finding these different categorizations is going to be an emergent discussion, I think. But I think creating false divides between like, this is actual play, this is not actual play, only does a disservice to everyone in the community.
I think we'll see sort of this kind of divide where we go like, oh yeah, it's a painting, and then we'll go, but like it's modernism, it's cubist, and we'll sort of see that divide happen a little bit more clearly. I also agree with Rowan that like I don't think it matters whether it's scripted or if it's just like friends at the table. I think that all that matters is like the end product. You don't sort of like ask a writer, right? Like you don't ask a novelist like, did you outline this or did you just make it up as you go? Like it doesn't essentially, I think like that sort of specificity of like the production doesn't necessarily matter. It's like the end result, the final thing that matters.
Movies is a good example, right? Some of them have large improvisational bits and alongside scripted bits, and they're all still movies, right? I think that's a good point. Boy, I
What
could talk to you
else?
two all day, but
Yeah, I know.
Have
Matt, do
we-
you have any
we
like
would
last?
love to have you on the podcast
Have
for
we
the next
convinced you
week.
we're smart?
But
Yes,
yes, you have. And
well, we only invited you
Listen.
on because we knew you were smart in the first place,
Aw.
so you didn't have to. That's not true.
No, we're smart.
I mean,
I
it is, but it
promise we're
isn't.
smart.
Yeah.
I promise we think so much about these things.
listeners,
believe
I've
it.
only been subscribed to Rascal News for a week, and I feel like I've already gotten my money's value out of it. And I kind of knew I would, because it's like, hey, it's like, what was it? Like the Dragon's Den, Shark's Tank. I don't invest in companies. I invest in people. I'm like, well, I saw the people who were doing this. I was like, oh, actually, all three of these people are great journalists. It's going to be a great website. So congratulations. And I highly encourage our listeners to subscribe, because I would like there to be a dedicated tabletop role-playing games journalism website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is desperately needed, and I feel the same as Matt. I know you all to be smart people and who have written interesting things, and I want to support that. We've already bugged you about like what you have coming up, but is there anything else you would like to promote, announce, pitch, whatever, anything cool that you didn't already mention?
I don't know.
Rascal.news, everybody.
Rascal.news.
Rascal.news.
I mean, I think that's everything on my end. I think I would like to say that one of the things that we're really proud of that has been going really well, but that will like require pretty consistent community commitment besides your dollars, is the announcement section, which is community submitted and just like Rascal supported, right? And
free to access.
Like every single post on the announcement section is literally just a press release. It is totally free to access. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to pay us. You can just look at the announcement section and see a lot of like crowdfunding campaigns and award shows and convention announcements. And likewise, if you wanted to submit one of those announcements to us, you can. It is like 100% a community service that we have decided that like this is something that we want to offer that like we don't want to make money off. So yeah, I think that that's something that we really felt very strongly that was something we wanted to like open with, right? We made it like a priority for us to figure out like, okay, how are we going to do this announcement section in a way that is like sustainable for us and also accessible to literally everybody. So we're really proud of that. So that's kind of the opposite of like trying to sell people things. It's literally just being like, here, let us help you.
Here's a place where people can find your things.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that. We're really pleased about it. I don't know. I don't think I can tell you much else. There's going to be, I think the other thing is there will be a live Q&A sometime in March. That we'll sort of talk about how it's going and the mistakes we've made and the problems we've run into and what we would do differently next time. So yeah, I'm excited about those two things, I think.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to be able to keep doing this. I have been freelance my whole professional life because I graduated into the pandemic, and I've been building stuff from the ground up since then. And I'm really excited to now be building something that feels like there could be a future in it.
Oh,
Hell
last thing. If you, the listener, have a story, if you know that someone is behaving badly, or if you want to
wrongdoers beware.
Yes.
Or if you want to slip me another contract that whatever, you can send a confidential email to tips@rascal.news. And it's treated as confidential from the minute it lands in that inbox, and nothing gets published without very, very going through like a very rigorous process that is outlined in our ethics and standards. But basically, if you have a story that you don't think anyone else is going to care about, I will probably care about it.
Excellent. The tip line is open.
At your service.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much,
for having
Rascals.
us.
We're very excited about the site. Like we said, we'll have all kinds of links in the show notes to the thing, but also some of the specific things that we mentioned. Please do, as things progress, let us know, and we will share them on our socials. And we'll be watching your career with great interest.
Okay.
I realized it was like saying
that's very Palpatine.
accidentally saying a Palpatine
Don't go-
line
don't go
without
full
even
Sheev.
knowing that I was doing it. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
And whatever you do, keep rolling them dice.